Hi everyone, I'm Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary, where it is our goal to provide optimal welfare and keep stress to a minimum for our animals. We respect every animal's individuality, remaining flexible in our approach to care and adapting as needed to meet the specific needs of each one. We use the least intrusive avenues available to achieve behavior change and the least intrusive, most effective methods possible to provide care. We guide animals in learning cooperative behaviors and strive for fear-free interactions, offering animals as much choice and control as possible while still maintaining their safety and ours. To that end, in the following video, you are going to see Laurel, a 2-year-old Morelia Bredli, who is already familiar with target training, cooperatively shift from her enclosure to a scale and back. The video footage is of her very first time being asked to perform this behavior, and then 9 days later when she was asked to repeat it. Laurel is already very familiar with target training and very used to being out of her enclosure for supervised exercise on activity stands and stations. However, this is the first time she's being asked to shift out of her regular habitat onto a scale. The reason there's a stool on the scale turned upside down is to give her an elevated surface that she feels comfortable transitioning out onto. The bottom of those stool legs has rubber on it, and then the inside underneath of the stool surface is textured. So this is going to make her feel more comfortable to come out while not giving her anything that she could accidentally get her tooth caught on or swallow. As you can see here, she's much longer than the scale, and so that's an issue. It's one thing for her to shift out directly onto the scale, but her whole body needs to be on that scale. So what I decided to do is see if she would follow the target around the stool leg and coil or wrap part of her body around that leg, and that's exactly what she does. I actually ask her to move quite a bit here, and I'm watching her tail and her entire body to make sure the entire thing is on the stool before I give her the reinforcement, which in this case is a food reward. Now she's 100% on the scale. When she's finished eating and I'm done getting the weight, I just lift the whole station off the scale and I hold it adjacent to her normal enclosure. She's voluntarily shifting back inside with just a little assistance from me. Now we fast forward to 9 days later when I'm asking Laurel to voluntarily shift out of her enclosure and onto the scale a second time. Note that the first time we did this was at night. It was during her normal awake period and her normal feeding time. This session is in the middle of the day. She happened to be awake and at her enclosure door, so we're attempting this during the daytime. And I do feel that she is less attentive and she's a little more sluggish because it's not a normal time for her mind and her body to be really awake and active, but she does just fine, and she repeats the behavior that she did the first time, shifting her body out onto the station, which is positioned on the scale. And as a note, you just need to push the tare button on the scale in order to get her weight, or just note what the weight of the station is, in this case the upside down stool, so that you can subtract that from the total weight once you get one. I'm asking her to move around the leg of the stool in the opposite direction this time than what I asked her the first time. And again, I'm watching that her entire body, including her tail, is on the stool station or on the scale so that I know I'm getting an accurate weight. And as soon as I see that she is completely on the scale and station, I go ahead and give her the reinforcement, which again is a food reward. Following this session, I choose to ask Laurel to cooperatively shift back into her normal habitat via targeting. This method works really well if you have a snake who is still in food mode right after the initial session. The snake generally already associates the target with a reinforcement, which is a food reward, and they get excited about the possibility of a second food item, and they're happy to follow the target back into the enclosure. But it's really important that you appropriately set up the environment for success in this case. So while she was still eating her first food reward, I moved the station and the scale adjacent to her enclosure. Then I took the lid off of her enclosure because she's in a vertical enclosure because she does lots of climbing. So by taking the lid off, I was able to place the target down through the top and into the enclosure, and first target her through the enclosure doorway, and then begin asking her to target upward to the top of her enclosure. That's because I obviously need her whole body shifted back into the habitat. Please remember that anytime you are using more than one food item as reinforcement during a single training session, that all of the food items you're using equal the amount of one normal meal. You don't want to overfeed your snake for the sake of training. I'm waiting for her tail to clear the doorway, so I've asked her to start moving along the top edge of her enclosure, following the target. And as soon as I notice that her tail is completely inside both doors and over the enclosure threshold, I go ahead and reinforce her. She takes her food item and she goes down to rest on the shelf or ledge inside her enclosure, at which time I'm able to safely close her doors, secure them, and then put the lid on her habitat so that she has now cooperatively shifted back inside with minimal handling stress to her or me. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found that enjoyable and beneficial. Hopefully it's helpful to some of you who are interested in training cooperative behaviors with your snake. During that session, we were able to accomplish several things. I was able to accomplish cleaning out Laurel's enclosure, cleaning out her water, giving her fresh water. I was able to accomplish getting a weight on her. She was able to get some mental stimulation and physical exercise, as well as a meal. Laurel is starting to be able to take a familiar behavior, one that she knows very well and is comfortable with, like targeting, and generalize it to different situations and different environments. Today, she was able to generalize the targeting to move out of her habitat and onto a station, which is on a scale. And then she was able to take that same behavior and generalize it to go back into her enclosure. Also building some resiliency. So by her being very comfortable and familiar with that behavior of targeting, she is now able to do different things in different situations using that known behavior as her anchor. Now, if we have to shift her out of the enclosure for almost any reason, if we have to take her to the vet and she has to be weighed at the vet, or maybe go onto a table to get radiographs or an ultrasound done, we should be able to use that targeting behavior to make her feel comfortable in those different situations and to be able to accomplish those tasks with minimal stress to her, or I should say minimal distress to her, and minimal danger to us. If you have any questions about snake training, snake behavior, or training and behavior with other species of animals, please feel free to contact me at behavioreducationllc@gmail.com or visit our website at behavioreducation.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, please remember to be kind and love your animals.